Okay, imagine this. You find out your entire marriage is built on a lie. And not just a small lie, but a massive 14-year-long deception that even involved a forged court document. This isn't some plot from a movie. It's the real story of Miss Jane and Mr. Hingston, and their case really makes you wonder, where does the law draw the line between a moral betrayal and actual legal fraud?
So let's just get right to the big question here. If you discover the very foundation of your marriage was a lie, can the legal system just hit an undo button? Can it be erased like it never happened? Well, as we're about to see, the answer is way more complicated than you'd think.
All right, so our story kicks off in 2016. Miss Jane meets Mr. Hingston, and right from the start, he seems totally upfront about his past. He tells her, yeah, he was married once before, way back in 1998. But he paints this picture of it being a tiny, youthful mistake, a marriage that was annulled almost immediately. You know, just a blip on the radar.
But here's where the story he told just completely falls apart. That one-day marriage he talked about, it was actually 14 years long. And that quick annulment in 1999? Nope, that didn't happen until 2012. And to sell this whole story when he married Miss Jane, he didn't just lie with his words. He literally created a fake court document to prove his story was true.
And this is so crucial for understanding Miss Jane's side of things. In her own words, this wasn't just about a guy fudging some dates. For her, because of her deeply held religious beliefs, the difference between a one-day marriage and a 14-year one was an absolute chasm. Her consent, her I do, was based on a complete and total fabrication.
And then you get this bombshell. In his own sworn legal document, Mr. Hingston just admits it, flat out. He says, and I'm paraphrasing here, yep, that 1999 document I gave you, it was fake. At this point, you got to be thinking, okay, case closed, right?
I mean, seriously. You have the lie, you have the fake document, and you have a full confession from the guy who did it. This has to be the most open and shut case for an annulment ever. But this is where the whole thing takes a very, very sharp and unexpected turn.
And here it is. The judge looks at everything, the 14-year lie, the forgery, the signed confession, and dismisses her application. The marriage is valid, it stands, and this is that moment that makes you lean in and just ask, how is that even possible? Well, the answer is all about the law's super strict, super narrow definition of fraud. So let's pop the hood and look at the legal engine here. We're about to break down exactly why a lie that feels so huge and so fundamental on a personal level just doesn't clear the very specific bar the law sets for wiping a marriage off the books. Okay, this is the legal heart of the whole thing. In Australian law, to get a marriage annulled for fraud, the lie has to be about one of two things: the actual identity of the person you married, or the nature of the ceremony itself. And here's the kicker. It doesn't cover lies about someone's personal history, their character, or how much money they have. This chart really draws a clear line in the sand. So you can get an annulment if you thought you were marrying Bob, but it was actually his identical twin brother Bill at the altar. That's fraud as to identity. Or if you were told you were signing up for a local play, but it was actually a real wedding ceremony. That's fraud as to the ceremony. But lying about your past marriages? The law puts that in the other column. Deception about personal history. And that's not enough. So when you look at the judge's decision, it all starts to make a kind of cold legal sense. He stuck to this very traditional, orthodox view of the law. He said Miss Jane knew she was marrying Mr. Hingston, the man standing right in front of her. The lie was about his history, not who he was. And that forged document? Well, there's even a specific part of the Marriage Act that says making a false statement on the paperwork still doesn't automatically cancel the marriage. Every legal door was just slammed shut. But just when it feels like a complete injustice, the story takes one final, fascinating twist. Because while the judge felt his hands were tied on the marriage issue, he was absolutely not going to let a forged court document slide. The law had another card to play. And here's what he did. First, he dismissed the annulment case. But then, he did something else. He ordered the entire case file, including Mr. Hingston's signed confession, to be sent straight to the criminal prosecutors. So, the very affidavit that Mr. Hingston signed to deal with this family court issue, yeah, that just became Exhibit A in a potential criminal case against him for forgery. His attempt to manage the situation might have just landed him in much deeper trouble. So, after all that legal drama, what does this incredible story really mean for the rest of us? Let's pull out the big takeaways here, because they're pretty important. Okay, so here are the big lessons. First, and this is a tough one, what feels like a massive moral deception in your heart isn't always fraud in the eyes of the law. Second, the legal system is designed to protect the stability of marriage, which basically means the law says it's on you to do your homework on your partner. And finally, a huge warning sign. Never, ever underestimate a sworn affidavit. What you say in a legal document is binding and can have serious consequences you never even thought of.
And all of this really leaves us with one final, pretty heavy question. This case shows there's a hard line between what the law will protect you from and what falls under personal trust. It really forces you to think, if the law won't step in to protect you from a partner's hidden past, then the ultimate responsibility, well, it rests with you.